Welcome to today's video, where we're going to be doing a website lookover of my Be Your Best You HQ website. I built that website from scratch. Some people on my team helped me tweak it and look at the look and feel, but it's something that's self-built and I wanted an expert to have a look at it. I'm Trudy Macon from Online Business Liftoff, and I've brought in Jacob Jacobson, founder of Cloudworks, who's worked with companies across many different industries. And he's here to give his expert feedback on what's working on my site and where improvements could be made. Jacob's helped a lot of businesses refine their online presence, and today he's taking a first-time look at my self-built site so that he can offer some valuable insights. So let's get right to it.
One of the things that's been pretty fun over the years is to be able to walk with a client through their current web presence, which maybe they created themselves, just starting out, maybe with Wix or Squarespace, and it's something they created. And if you brought your drawings of your dream home to an architect, everybody's apologetic about it, but at the same time, they know there's room to improve. So what we wanted to do is invite you in to taking a look at a web project here. And then I'm really looking at this for the first time on this call to be able to give any insights, pointers, feedback, things that could be helpful through the lens of somebody who does this every day.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's get started with the first one.
Okay, so I'm going to pop this one up. Trudy, this is Be Your Best You HQ, and maybe you want to give us a little background of this project.
It originally started out because I create quizzes and diagnostic tools, and I had a diagnostic tool that I used when I would do live face-to-face workshops on how to make really tough decisions that are going to change your life. And the sort of decisions when you really stew over them and think about it before you make a decision. And I've got this tool that walks people through a thinking process that helps take the emotion out of it and then puts it back in at the end of the process, puts the emotion back in. And it really helped a lot of people, and I needed a place for it to live online so they could just go there and do it while I was doing the workshop. That's how it started out originally. And then it became a project for the team to try and turn it into something that could be useful and helpful to people. And we pulled together just something that was really basic. The why of the website is to help people be the best they can mentally, physically, and spiritually. And it's intended to basically provide information, advice, tips, techniques, and things like that. And it is still a work in progress.
Yeah, great. So right off the bat, I really like just the color. And sometimes before we even get into the technical perspective, I think imagery, especially in this background, I call this the hero section, these large images, videos. I always tell clients when we're looking at stock photography, it's what's inside the image, it's a picture of, but it's also just the general atmosphere, energy, vibe, you might call it, of the photo, because ultimately you're not looking at the detail of the image. It's creating an emotional reaction in the viewer. So for me, when I see this, I'm picking up the orange from the logo in the image. And then I'm also just seeing kind of a warmth and a glow that radiates maybe from natural beauty of both the person and the blurred background. So I do like that. I will give you just a couple areas of feedback, things that strike me. And as always, I try to be courteous, kind, and helpful at the same time whenever I'm giving people feedback. Sometimes the project is their baby. Sometimes it's something that somebody made or somebody else made for them. But I typically will like to start at the top. So I just commented on the hero section. Across the top, I see this a lot, Trudy. Oftentimes the logos are built maybe with a different aspect ratio in mind. Maybe that's a business card. Maybe it's even a piece of apparel. And a lot of times when we're putting our logo on a header navigation, something that we don't realize is it basically gets shrunk down to the most postage stamp size that it can be. So I often encourage folks to consider, now, of course, we're looking at the desktop view of the site. We could pop into a mobile view here in a moment, but to consider taking their logo and making it into an elongated version, especially if it's got text. I'm pretty sensitive towards that because the text can get pretty small as this logo is compressed into a very small area. So one thing that you might consider, is there a way that your graphic designer could take this Be Your Best You headquarters, and would it be appropriate for that logo to maybe fill this space and go a little more horizontal, which would allow the text to be a little larger? That's something to consider. Something that I do like here is it seems like very consistent, carrying the orange throughout. You probably won't be able to see this on the recording, but I'm popping out my color dropper here. And I'm just noticing that the orange here in this logo accent, a little darker orange, it is a lighter orange in the active tab of home. So that's just something that's minor, but you might consider is potentially carrying this darker burnt orange throughout. I do see it in this call to action button here. And so I'm just noticing it's a little bit lighter there. We saw just some of the ad pop-ups and those sorts of things. Those can be a way to monetize the tool, or the website or the project. Also balancing that with thinking through the perspective of the user. The other thing I'm noticing, my guess is, and without popping the hood, my guess is this is probably built using a tool called Divi. And I can tell just looking at the menu on the outside.
Yeah,
And that's what we use in our agency, helping clients build sites. Often with Divi, what I find, it has a lot of extra padding up above and below the menu logo. And by default, this is the text size. So I can just tell in a snap which tool it was built on based on the visual defaults. So along with looking at the logo, possibly going with a longer format that's more horizontal, I would consider either having this text size be a little bit bigger potentially. And I think I would tighten up the white area just because to me, you've got a lot of energy in that photo and the white area just is low energy to me. Or I would consider taking this orange color, and sometimes a color in accent can look really good. In a big blob can be too much, but I would consider, could we add some energy to this just to see what it would look like to do this header area with that orange color, and then maybe these buttons, call to action links become white. Just something to consider. But I think if you were to make this logo horizontal format, it would be a little more prominent. I think these could get a little bit larger, and then maybe you tighten up some of the space above and below, and maybe consider experimenting, bringing in that main accent color into the navigation bar. So that's a first look at the navigation bar. Is that helpful so far?
yeah, it is interesting. Just knowing the background and the history and what you've got to say. Those are good points. Yeah, thanks.
As I go down the page, and again, typically I like to, that's the first thing that we see. One thing that I'm noticing is just in the hover state, it looks like by default, maybe the photo zoomed in a little bit. On hover, it zooms out. For me, sometimes animation or effects can be an ad, but one thing that I like, when I say ad, I mean like a benefit. I like to do things that are subtle so it's not as noticeable or jumpy potentially. So I think any animation overlay effects that we do, we want to do it so where you can feel it, but you can't see it. So for me, this hover effect might be a little bit dramatic or a little more intense than I would like to see, but I wouldn't mind a slow reveal, something to zoom out. Sometimes a little bit of animation can help a static 2D image have a little more depth and life to it. And then in this header hero section, I would consider, I do the big bold font here. I would consider, could we get this call to action button somehow higher? So whether it's over here in a column, if this was 2/3 width and this was maybe 1/3 width, it's probably because of this ad space here, but I would just be a little bit concerned that this is starting to push a little bit further down the page than I would want it to be. So it may even be that you would put it under this "Be the Best You" tagline. I just don't want it to drift too far out of my hero area. And I might consider, because the photo does have a lot of orange tones in it, you might consider, is there a way to have this pop a little bit more with color where maybe the button itself is white, but it's got a yellow orange border on it, something like that. Just something to give it a little more depth or contrast, or potentially try this darker black color background with white text. I just don't want to lose this as it transitions to the next section and having the same color or have it be too far down. So I think the general framework and the structure is right on, that you've got a photo that gives some emotion, it captures you, it's immersive, you've got a very clear tagline, it's bold, it's easy to read. And I would just want to take this call to action and bring it up a little bit more as part of this component, and maybe try a couple different colors just to make sure that it really pops with some good layers there. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, it's just looking at the button there. Not quite sure how you could put it in on the right hand side. For me, it's my right hand side,
Sure.
without messing up the photo.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is tricky with a responsive image. Hopefully you can see this, but I just resized my window to pop into a mobile view. And this is very common with Divi. It's often going to collapse into a hamburger menu. That's great. For whatever reason, I'm noticing we're missing the logo here in mobile. So you might just take a peek at that. And then actually, I do like this on desktop. I can see how on mobile, the button's really nice. I think the centered placement is good. And you might consider either popping these things over to center, see how it feels on the image. Or if you like this lined up to the left, you could always slide the button over to the left. So that's something that I think about often is let's take a look on desktop and let's take a look on mobile because often the same elements might respond a little differently. But yeah, some of the things I'm seeing here, these are very common things where you're in the area of 80, 90% where it needs to be. And sometimes that next 10, 15% can really take it to the next level. Let's go down the page a little bit. I really like how this section, you're carrying that orange theme throughout. You've got the quote here from Viktor Frankl. And I think this does a nice job of, for basically being text, it does make it come alive with some different layers. When I go to mobile, I get a little bit less of that. So it's a little bit more bland on mobile. I wouldn't mind trying to see if we can bring in maybe that orange background here, or perhaps the background color to where we want to simplify it on mobile so it's streamlined, easy to read, but I wouldn't want to pare it back to where it's too simple to where it feels maybe a little more sparse here. But as I say that, there's always a balancing for why different decisions are made. And sometimes you go a little bit more colorful and then a client will have you pull it back and you're finding the middle ground that works for your personal taste and also for what the brand's trying to accomplish. And then I'll just briefly scroll down through the page. It looks to me like these are pulling up different results based on different conditions. One thing that may be helpful in a setting like this, I really like this font here. Here in the overwhelmed, lonely, lost your self-confidence. I think this is a really nice that works well with the color, the orange color, and I think it's a nice modern feel. It may be worth considering taking this font and weaving it more throughout the site. Of course, in the quote, we've got more of a serif-based font. We've got this big slab here and the cursive kind of HQ. I like this look and feel also with the black and white imagery, which maybe speaks to the fact that there's mentally or emotionally some challenges going on, and you can sense that through the mood of the image. But then you've got this pop of orange here that maybe invites you to an action or do something different. So it would be interesting to me to consider even taking this color scheme and look and feel and seeing what that would look like up here. This to me feels very bright and very cheery, very warm. This to me makes me feel like, okay, I've got a challenge that I'm looking to take action on. And I'd be curious to maybe weave some of this imagery together with this, because this looks very different in terms of mood to me. Something else too that I'll mention is we've got a lot of text. And I think as visual people, I think the images really help. And I think you could also consider maybe an icon that would match some of these things. So you'd have some people will respond to the verbiage, lost your self-confidence. And sometimes there's different little icons that might go with that that could be helpful. I was thinking that especially here where we're in this section that's got a lot of text. And it may be that if there was perhaps an emoji that would connect with each one of these options, that would be something to consider. And then finally, as we get near the bottom, just a couple little things that I would note. For me, this is probably the default newsletter subscription that Campaign provides you with. I would love to consider bring that orange throughout. The sign me up, I might consider a verbiage like get updates, or here you talk about the tips, stories, and advice. And so I would want to tie that back in as what we're signed up for. Receive tips in my inbox, receive email updates, something like that. I'm noticing here that as I hover over the decision aid or call to action button, because it's adding the icon on hover, it looks like, or possibly the padding settings might be different on hover. It's just wrapping this text a little differently. So that might be something to consider. And then again here, I think I would consider possibly, you've got the photo centered and the text and name left justified, which I think often less left justified is easier to read. I would consider as the way we can fold these into a card of some sort so that the text has some sort of a border or a connection to the image. You got bonus points because you almost have that red or orange color coming through here, Trudy, in your color that you're wearing. And then again, I like this where you've got an image, you've got some of that color accented throughout, and you've got this action button. I think this one works great. If I was to pop into mobile view, it still looks good. So to me, this is a section that I think works well. On desktop, on mobile view, I think we're in pretty good shape there. I might consider having this button centered on the tablet view just to line up with the centering of this, but that's more of a preference deal. And then here, I think I would just be the only caution on the bottom is just to make sure that this text get in touch doesn't get lost. We can talk about this if you want. This might be one where, as you're looking at your ADA compliance, I am in the back of my mind thinking about those color contrast ratios of foreground and text. This one might be one that would start to get a little iffy just with the lighter background there. But yeah, overall, those are some of my initial reactions. I think there's probably a functionality that's there, and then there's probably some elements where you have some really good pieces, and considering weaving some of this graphical feeling throughout, I think is great. And then again, taking in account just the emotion and the aspect of the organization, there's parts that are a little bit darker and moodier, and then there's parts that are a little bit lighter and brighter. And I think there's probably a balance to some of those, but at the same time, it seems like there might be an opportunity to pick one of those and run in that lane versus the contrast of the emotion that I read here, which I think connects pretty well. And then this is maybe a different mood, and you might consider picking one of those two to really hone in on. So those are some of my reactions just on this homepage for Be Your Best You HQ. Again, you take it with a grain of salt, and there's always a perspective and a reason for why things are the way they are. But seeing this for the first time, those are some of the initial feedbacks that come to mind from my experience working on many different projects over the years.
No, that's really helpful. I think that's quite helpful. And I was just thinking I probably should have added a little bit more to the why of the website.
That helps too. Even understanding the call to action is talking about taking me to that decision aider. And so maybe there's an area too to describe, here's some of the decisions that people often we have resistance to, we avoid, and the decision aider tool will help you map out your options, consider alternatives, and take action on the decisions that matter most. So there might even be some copy around the benefit of this tool to encourage clicking through.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh, that was
Absolutely.
fun.
Okay, no, that's cool. All right. I've made a list of things to go back and have a look at. If anybody wanted to reach out to you and get one of these website lookovers,
Yeah, absolutely.
where they go?
For your listeners, I think that would be really fun. You can go to getcloudworks.com. You can also email me directly. It's jacob@getcloudworks.com. And my commitment to you is that if one of your listeners shoots me an email, would you do a review for me? And I'd be happy to either hop on a quick Zoom call with you like this, or I can send you a Loom video if that's simpler. And I'd be happy to hop on your website, give you 5 minutes of feedback, some ideas, some insights that you could take. If you're doing it yourself, or if you already have a web professional, you could take that to them. I'd be happy to offer that for your listeners. Shoot me an email and I will give you a Loom video of thoughts and insights on your website.
Fantastic. Great. Fantastic. That was really useful. Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for watching. If you found Jacob's feedback helpful, please like and subscribe for more. Up next, we're reviewing a website I built with a friend a few years ago as a way to learn new skills, but it's now definitely in need of some love and attention. So don't miss it.